What's up, everyone? Yeah, I started making a video yesterday talking about the coming war against white nationalism, which I think we might see something like that. Or maybe not a war, like a conflict, like a struggle, but something. But I just started ranting too much, so I was like, this is too pathetic to put on the internet. But I'm not moving. Maybe I can do a better job. But I think with white nationalists, many of them, or people that are aligned with them or have similar beliefs, like maybe these people that stormed the Capitol. I don't really think they were white nationalists, most of them, but I think the parallel there is you have a bunch of people that kind of don't believe in our system. They think our system is illegitimate. So maybe they think America's been perverted. If not, maybe a very small number of them think America was like illegitimate to begin with. I don't know. But you basically have a bunch of people that there can't be any reconciliation. There can't be any compromise because their beliefs are just so extreme. They can't. They're basically trying to tear the system down. If they believe our elections are illegitimate, they believe our country is illegitimate, it has to be brought down. I mean, these people were protesting the election because they thought it was fraudulent. But, I don't believe that these people are objective observers of election integrity. I believe they didn't want to see someone else other than Trump. They didn't want the establishment back in power. So although they are fans of Donald Trump, it's really what Donald Trump represents. Opposition to the system, fighting the swamp as they see it. I don't know how true that is. But he definitely has his own independent way of doing things that's outside the mainstream, that's for sure. But yeah, we saw the Capitol raid, which was pretty violent. We had a lot of violence with the Black Lives Matter thing, but this was condensed and obviously on a much more important target, the seat of our government. But it's been kind of a low-level struggle. Sometimes they get banned off of Twitter, or they end up in run-ins with the law. They're getting surveilled by law enforcement. But I think these people are gaining followers. They are kind of coalescing their beliefs, consolidating some of the power they have. But I could see them getting kicked off of platforms. But ultimately, their beliefs are so irreconcilable with the norms of the country. I believe it's inevitably going to result in violence of some sort. Even if it's just like one-off guys that feel like they got to take charge. Like some of the examples we've seen, Robert Bowers or the El Paso guy. Not only the violence, but just the rhetoric and following, I think, is going to pick up amongst these guys, amongst the disgruntled, who, really represent the small minority of the population, but have an outsized voice and gain outsized attention. But and I hate to use this as a comparison because everyone always talks about like the 9/11, but that was a huge event. So yeah, I'm not saying anything like that's going to happen, but if something like the Capitol, more violence breaks out, I think you will see a crackdown on social media and also among groups. They're going to be surveilled by the government. There's going to be an increased budget. I think this is happening already, but a lot of these people still operate out in the open. They have Twitter accounts, so there hasn't been. I think what kind of usually happens is, say with Islamic terrorism, yeah, it was an issue. They tried to blow up the Twin Towers, like, oh yeah, maybe we should watch out for these guys. And then like 9/11 happens, and then it's just like slapping the hive. So we totally overreact. We start invading countries, surveilling mosques, like harassing imams to some degree. And I had just watched this documentary called Dirty Wars, which is kind of interesting, by the Scahill guy, talking about some of the actions that we took in the Middle East, Afghanistan. There was a guy who, this guy was a imam. He wasn't a terrorist, but he had associations with terrorists. So even if you're not, say, violent, what the hell's going on with this here? Sorry. Yeah, even if you're not a violent person yourself, if you're involved in extreme movements, you're probably going to have 1 to 3 degrees of separation. Like this guy, his name was Answar al-Awlaki. I'm probably fucking up that name, but he was an American imam, and he was opposed to American injustice against Muslims in the Middle East. Actually, some of the hijackers went to his mosque, I believe. So although he wasn't a terrorist himself, he had associations. So I think this is what could happen with, say, the National Justice Party, who these guys aren't partaking in violence themselves, but their rhetoric is pretty extreme. I think it's very extreme. But they're trying to do it in a way where they generate outrage, but they don't generate, so they don't end up in prison. But I think when the government cracks back, because they're forced to, from public pressure, from outrage, they don't necessarily have fairness on their mind, and they don't necessarily say, oh, we're going to have a rational reaction to this event. It's done through emotion, it's done through vengeance, etc. So I could see these groups and these guys getting in the crosshairs, and it creates kind of like a cycle. I always kind of hated that term, but cycles of violence. There's some truth to it, right? Because these guys are, they see, their victimhood in everything that happens, whether they really believe that or they try to play it up as a way to kind of play up to the crowd. Every time some guy is arrested by the FBI or interrogated by the FBI, this is like, evidence that the government is suppressing them and abusing them. So as this process happens, more people get radicalized. They, potentially turn to more extreme moves. So I think this is something we could see in the future, as people like Eric Stryker or whoever actually try to resist what they see as an illegitimate U.S. government, an illegitimate system. I've also thought about online. A lot of people are getting purged off Twitter. Even Rush Limbaugh hid his account because he was afraid of being purged. And I have no expertise or no knowledge of technology, the tech industry. I have more of a business background myself, so that's where I'm coming from. But I never let ignorance prevent me from having an opinion or making a video about it, right? So, Twitter can't just kick half of its users off. They can't just kick conservatives off. It would be a huge blow to their business. You'd see a lot of people leave. There's a lot of resistance to this. Forget conservatives, right? They kicked a bunch of QAnon people, but I still see, basically like openly National Socialist accounts on Twitter. So stuff like that might get banned. But, Ted Cruz, Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, I don't think we're going to see people like that get banned unless they partake in some crazy conspiracies, something like this. So I think that's going to prevent like a mass movement to other platforms. And I think you'll see the real extreme people go to places like Gab, and then they'll try to shut down Gab, and maybe they'll have to jump to another platform. But that's how it's going to work. But they talk about white nationalism being the biggest terrorist threat now, and maybe technically it is because they conduct the most terrorist attacks. I mean, terror attacks are not a large killer in the United States generally. In a given year, even with shootings like El Paso or the Pearl nightclub shooting, is that what it was in Florida? You end up like 40 deaths a year, which is like a weekend in Chicago. But they generate outsized fear, outrage, etc. But still, the potential is there. Islamic terrorism caused a lot of damage, but I think it's the biggest potential threat. That's what I'll say, because 60% of the country is white, or 65%, and not even all of them have to. Like, there's white nationalists that aren't even necessarily white; they're like mixed or Puerto Rican or whatever. I don't know, but they have the largest group to choose from. I mean, Muslims are like 1% of the U.S. White people are 60% of the U.S. So for that reason alone, it's like the biggest terror threat, based on the group they have to choose from. So yeah, they have the biggest potential recruiting base. So it's not necessarily a prediction, but I feel like one outcome that's possible, that seems like it's becoming more possible as time goes on. People are getting more outraged as we go through tough times. Maybe it'll subside if things get better. I don't know. But I think it's kind of one problem that America hasn't had. They're going to have a reckoning with it. Just like we had a reckoning with Islamic terrorism. And that hasn't gone away, but it's been addressed pretty substantially. Islamic terrorism in the U.S. at this point in time is not a big killer, a big danger, although I'm sure we still have a lot of resources going into it. Yeah, that's all I got to say for this video.